Teachers on Reddit, what is the most stupid answer someone has ever given on an exam? Ex-primary school teacher, 5'11" for non-UK people. Here, science lesson based on the water cycle. Towards the end of the lesson, a student asked if this how kettles make clouds under their kitchen worktops. Obviously meant steam building up etc. This is where I fricked up. Rather than dismissing the concept and focusing on only the water cycle, I responded kind of yes, before proceeding to explain the differences between that of the water cycle and that of how steam is produced, and why it builds up under the cabinets. It rises, you see it when it cools etc. Whilst comparing and contrasting the two. About 2 months later, a science exam, opening line, all of Earth's clouds start out in kettles. I laughed out loud. My dad once told me about one of his students complaining she missed a point because the topic of the question wasn't covered in class. The question? Can you get pregnant from a handshake? He was teaching freshman med students. That sounds like one of those too simple to be easy questions that has a hidden answer. Like maybe it's possible to get pregnant from a handshake in specific, very ridiculous circumstances. College English professor here. Though the dumbest exam answer I ever saw came from one of my fellow TAs in a huge lecture hall film class back when I was still a grad student. For some unfathomable reason, one of his students decided to answer the written final exam in the form of a poem that didn't begin to answer any of the exam questions, nor did it reference any of the movies we watched in class, which you had to pick from for the answers, but instead just threw in references to whatever random movies he could work into his rhyme scheme. And even setting all that aside, this student still had zero talent for poetry. I don't know what the heck he was thinking, but my friend decided to generously give the student a 20% for bothering to show up and at least write something down. I think the guy knew he was going to fail or that he knew nothing on the topic, so he decided that frick it, I'll write a poem. Maybe I'll get a mark or two. Beats an empty sheet, I guess. Math teacher here. One question had a graph with a bunch of points on it, and students were asked to state the range of the graph. Except I teach in French, and the word for range is image, which is also a translation for the English word image. Student connected the dots in whatever way they wanted, and the sketch they ended up with kind of looked like a snail. So, their answer to the range of the graph, an escargot. Just the other day, the question asked the learners to explain the myth in the passage. Answer: a myth is a female moth. And I just sort of looked at this answer for a while before realizing the extent of stupid answers. I was teaching AP Environmental Science. I had a kid in the class who really shouldn't have been, but it was the only science that fit into his schedule, and our counselors were morons. The test was about water management, and the question itself was about wastewater treatment. Something like identify 2 materials which would be removed from wastewater by primary treatment. The kid, who was an 11th grader, said diapers and doo-doo. We assumed he meant diapers and fesses. I really hope so. Anyway. Upvote for counselors are morons comment. It is amazing how much they can wreck kids' lives if they don't do their jobs. Also not a teacher, but in 7th grade I took a grammar test. It was 10 questions, 3 points apiece. I missed every question and forgot to put my name on the test. I was given a 3/30. I mean, I wouldn't put my name on work like that either. Academically dumb, but in the real world being self-aware can be important. B. I am in a 1-to-1 school. Every student is issued an iPad, so I use a digital quiz that my students can type on. I can't remember what the question was, but I remember the student's answer. It was a pizza emoji. Actually, this is pretty smart since some databases aren't prepared to store images. It could have been stored as a corrupted text and tell the professor that he answered correctly. Not a teacher, but in the final exam at school, one particularly lazy kid wrote his name on the front so it would count, then proceeded to fall asleep on and drool all over his exam. I wanna know what happened to the kid's test. Asking for a friend. One of my teachers said that as they were marking year 12 final, someone responded to an essay question with "I don't know, but here's a picture of a bird," and then drew a really beautiful bird. I teach English as a foreign language in China. Learning about professions. Model answer. Q. What do you want to be? A. I want to be a. Students answer. I want to be a potato. My geography teacher used to mark GCSE exam papers in the summer for a bit of extra money. He told us the dumbest thing was a paper some girl had taken and had not done very well in. He got to the last question, a 12-mark essay, and she's just written a list of all her friends and their current boyfriends. Clearly she realized she was going to fail anyway and didn't want to put the effort in. My mum was a teacher. She was doing a geography quiz with year 7/8s. 6/7th grade. One of the questions was what was the biggest island until Australia was discovered. One kid answered trick question. Australia isn't real. I hope you're an Aussie. Took a world religions class in high school, got a test question. What is the term for hostility and discrimination against Judaism? Response is antisemitism, of course, but teacher in a tired voice said someone answered Christianity. I mean, from a historical perspective he's not wrong. Hilarious though. I once had a student write the following on an essay. Everything I know about the Civil War came from the movie Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. I teach college. When you think about it, that student is not wrong. A student writes stuff like BTC or WHM on blanks on math tests. He's 10 and can't read. How he got to 3rd grade I don't know. I've been calling attention to him in meetings for 2 months now and nothing. 1970s. In my sister's science class, one question was, what is red tide? Another kid's answer was, it's the influx of Chinese communists in Southeast Asia. Teacher gave him a -2 on that one for being a smartass. It's when the water is red, duh. It was supposed to be a lengthy subjective answer on a particular concept, and instead, the student starts with a line of concept, answers a story based on a movie and ends with adding another conceptual line in the end. In high school one of my classmates did this with a 5-page paper, wrote an intro and a conclusion, filled 4 pages of nonsense, turned it in and got an A. Not a teacher, but when grading a quiz, we graded each other's. On South Africa in world history, the girl that I was grading said that Africa was a country in South America. I can provide something stupid I did myself multiple times. Me and my friends had this meme, I guess, where the answer to every question we didn't know would either be 6, 42 or Jesus. One day we had a science exam which I didn't do anything for, so I said screw it and answered all questions with one of these 3 answers. Fun thing is that, for one question I filled in 42 and it was actually within the margin of error. Answer was 43, so I got 1 point for that, bumping my total grade from a 1 to a 1.1. Obligatory, not a teacher, but before I had my history teacher, who liked to put funny answers on tests that were clearly wrong. She had put Apunahasapima Petalin among historical Babylonian figures on a test, and people actually picked the answer unironically. Studying is important, folks. Obligatory, not a teacher, but in A&P school, aircraft mechanic school, there was a question on a test: how do you measure cable tension regarding flight control cables from the cockpit to control surfaces? One student put down amateur. WTF. Not on an exam, but an answer in class. Ask the class what is dangerous about a nuclear reactor exploding near a populated area. Kid's hand shoots up and I call on him. Is it because it makes sandwiches? All the other kids turn around and stare at him. I ask him to clarify and he sheepishly says, I dunno, sir. For a second I just thought that was the answer. No son, the problem is that it doesn't make sandwiches. Not a teacher, but when I was in primary school I was so lazy during a maths test that I didn't recheck my finished scripts despite having 10 minutes to go and the teacher's constant reminders. Turns out I had accidentally flipped 2 pages of the exam script together and left the middle 2 pages completely blank. Guess there's a reason why practically every big exam I ever took started with a reminder to check that we had the correct amount of pages in our test. Not a teacher. One time I didn't study at all for a test. I left almost all the answers blank. The very last question was the only one I got marks for. The question was, what is a haiku? Please define and provide an example. My haiku was, I have failed this test. I should have studied harder. I hate myself, man. My teacher wrote for sure and I got full marks. I studied for the rest of the tests that year. In India, one of my friends put, Gay Hamri Mata Hai, Mujko Cook Nahinata Hai. Basically, cow is my mother. I don't know crap. You could scream this in the street and I'd swear you're about to use a stand to throw me into the shadow realm to collect the Dragon Balls. After working on a team project, 3rd graders were asked what did you learn? A couple of my favorites. How to lose a game. That I hate people. Not a teacher, but I used to tutor high school kids. This kid needed help with an upcoming English literature test, so I spent 2 hours explaining Chaucer's Canterbury Tales to him. Then I started quizzing him. I had a printout with mock questions and I started with the easiest one. In the Canterbury Tales, where are the pilgrims going? Answer: to Santiago de Compostela. He was dead serious too. I believe this explains why I did not go into teaching. Science teacher here. Funniest answer. Q. Name a good source of protein. Platypus. Most stupid answer. Q. Why do you hear thunder after you see lightning? Because sound travels slower than noise. I had a friend who was really smart in college. He even did exercise courses in game theory and contract law and economics. He had an exam where he didn't study that much, but at the bottom he posted a picture of Gandalf with the text "You shall not pass." He was 100% sure he wouldn't pass, but got an Hail Mayo. I've seen both his assignment and the grade, because I didn't believe him Mayo. I had a question asking when MLK was assassinated. Kid put 2034. Like dude, that year hasn't occurred yet. Do you know what year it is now? Are you aware of the Gregorian calendar? Technically not an answer, but for the AP test, and possibly many other standardized tests, my classmate took advantage of the rule where the grader has to disregard anything the student crosses out with a single line. After finishing his essay for the AP US History exam, he wrote an elaborate story of a unicorn and its essential role in the development of the US and crossed it out with a single line. Victor Frankenstein and Hamlet are both characters created by William Shakespeare. Happened 10 years ago. I'm still shaking my head. Not a teacher, but my dad was. He taught French. Best translation ever from French to English as part of a longer text, not just this sentence. Elle marche le long de la rue avec un matelot barbeau. She walked down the street with a bearded mattress. We can only imagine the look on the poor kid's face when they wrote that, trying desperately to figure out what the heck was going on. Mattress? Mattress? WTF. But that's what it says. Mattress equals matelot. I used to teach English to French kids. One of them, who was actually one of my best pupils, a really smart and hardworking girl, wrote a story about a very scary castle in which there were bald smiled. Now guess what a bald smiled actually is? Hint, it's an animal. Not a teacher, but I had to write an English test essay on our topic for the semester. Sadly though, I forgot we had the test, so I forgot all my notes. So for an hour straight I just wrote "I am a fish" over and over again. I somehow managed to convince my friend to write the same thing on her leftover papers so that I wouldn't be the only stupid one. Not a teacher, but my mother is. Once she came back from her lunch break to find 2 of her students taking pictures of the exam key, she immediately rewrote the exam and gave them both zeros. Later, one of the students' mothers calls and says she's suing because her daughter wouldn't be able to get into the university she wanted to if she bombed this test. Before you ask, I live in California. What would really hurt her chances is being expelled. I once had a student actually spell his own name wrong. It's the one question everyone should get. And it wasn't a typo. Hando. Peas. Claiming that term if no one else owns it for a handwriting mistake. Not to be confused with a handy, especially in school. One time one of my friends accidentally wrote my name in the name spot because he saw me write my name there. I also tricked the same friend to write IDK in the name section. I was teaching agricultural science, and we were going over the different breeds of cows, cattle. On the exam I asked what were the names of the breeds, and one student put chocolate, vanilla, strawberry and Neapolitan. I got a good laugh out of it. For those who wanted to know, correct answers were Jersey, Holstein, Angus, Hereford and Highland. We have some belted Galloways near us. Your student probably would describe them as Aureus semicolon. College professor here. I just gave a midterm in my music history class. The question was something to the effect of what invention c. 1450 completely revolutionized the distribution of literature? They answered, boats. Not only had I never mentioned boats in class, I don't think, but also this person seemed to believe that boats didn't exist before then. A student on an exam I was marking didn't know the answer, so he said he was going to list the first 151 Pokemon, which it turns out he couldn't do from memory, so I marked that instead, filling in his blanks in red pen. Even if I had been able to assign the mark to the exam, he got less than 50% of the Pokemon right. If you're going to give a cute answer, make sure you can actually follow through. Not a teacher, but our teacher showed us. It was a bio test and the question was about how the villi and the intestine worked, and thus person answered with impulses are sent to the muscle to pump blood, and I think about that every bio test. As a nursing student, I can say 100% accurate. Gonna put it on every test if I don't know an answer. I wrote transport layer or some crap as an answer to a networking question. I got it correct, but was deducted the mark because I swore. I used to tutor a kid in 5th grade math. On our first day I gave him an assessment to see where he was. One question was 36x10. After about 5 minutes of working on it, he got 4. He got 4. Not a teacher, but my mom is, and she had me grade her tests on occasion. One time someone said that Thomas Paine wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin. My ex was an art school student, and she told me that one of her classmates, instead of handing in an essay, painted a picture and handed it in saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words. He failed that assignment. I like to lighten the mood in my courses sometimes. I teach university microbiology courses, and these are some of my favorite examples of students not wanting extra credit. Q. In honor of my birthday, would you like 2 free points? A. No. Q. On a scale of 1-5, 5 being the most awesome, how awesome is my ugly Christmas sweater? You get the number of points you select. A. 2. This was my favorite example of a serious question with a WTF answer. Q. What virus is linked to cervical cancer? A. Mad cow. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.